Welcome back to Green the Grid and Electrify Everything, a presentation put together by New Yorkers for Clean Power. I am their Education and Careers Coordinator, Cal Truman, and this video is to briefly touch on waste, industry, and agriculture, which are three areas of the New York State economy that are providing a smaller amount of the climate warming pollution than buildings, transportation, and electricity, but that are still important. So I'd like to devote a little bit of attention to them, even though they're not really the focus of New Yorkers for Clean Power. We'll just take a second to see what they're about, and then we'll talk about ways to get involved. So as I mentioned, these are very important sectors. They just aren't the focus of New Yorkers for Clean Power as an organization, and they're less applicable to the Green the Grid and Electrify Everything strategy. The tools for addressing them are just different. But let's get into it. 12% of emissions in the state come from waste. Waste refers to anything that gets made but not used. So that includes food scraps, manufacturing byproducts, sewage, and anything that gets thrown in the trash. Addressing waste means either eliminating it or limiting it and then handling it properly. That can look like recycling to keep useful materials out of the landfill. It could mean donating excess food and then composting whatever's no longer edible, which cuts down on methane from landfills, which is a very powerful greenhouse gas. It could also mean avoiding fast fashion that wears out quickly, and fixing broken items instead of throwing them away and buying brand new ones, which take new resources to produce. Repair cafes are a community level tool for connecting people who like to fix things with people who have items that need to be fixed. So generally speaking, at a repair cafe, you have coaches who are experts in repairing watches or clothing. They're good at sewing, or maybe they can fix computers. Bicycles is pretty common. So you'll have folks who can fix those things and they'll be there, and folks will trickle in with their items, and you have a good conversation, and the person either helps you to fix your item or they fix it for you, and you get to sit there and get to know your neighbors. So it's a good way to repair your objects and also your community. So on a municipal level, if we want to zoom out just a skosh, things like wastewater treatment, methane capture at landfills, and industrial composting facilities are all tools for dealing with emissions from waste. And particularly municipal level composting is really interesting and gaining traction around New York State. So big facilities to deal with the food waste problem because it's pretty pronounced. Industry at 9% encompasses a lot of processes. This is sort of a catch-all. They include a few huge emitters, including cement manufacturing, refrigerant chemical management, so you have that in refrigerators and air conditioners, and even crypto mining, so for cryptocurrencies or anything that relies on the blockchain. Cement production releases a very large amount of carbon dioxide, almost a quarter of all industrial emissions. If cement production were a country, it would be the third largest carbon dioxide emitter in the world. So changing how we make cement and concrete is a sustainability hot topic in the industrial world. There's a lot of brain power going into this because we, as a globe, use a lot of cement. I believe it is the second most commonly used substance in the world after water. Don't quote me on that, but it's something in that level of magnitude. Refrigerant chemicals like the ones used in air conditioners, here we've got a car, and also refrigerators, such as this industrial chiller at a supermarket. Those chemicals, those refrigerant chemicals, can be 15,000 times more powerful than carbon dioxide at warming the planet. So every time you bring your car into the mechanic and they're like, oh, we have to recharge the air conditioner, that's a euphemism for all of your refrigerant chemicals have escaped from the car and are now in the atmosphere, cooking the planet at 15,000 times the pace of carbon dioxide. So we're going to just refill it and let it leak out again. Switching to less warming options. So switching out the chemicals we're using, which and over 100 50 other countries have signed on to in the Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol, if you want to be a nerd about it, which I certainly do. We've agreed globally, okay, we're going to stop using these extremely powerful greenhouse gases as refrigerant chemicals. We're going to switch to ones that are less warming or not warming at all. And then you also want to prevent the chemicals that are currently in use from escaping leaky air conditioning units and supermarket chillers. This is one of the simplest and most powerful fixes we have in limiting warming, just not letting them escape. So if your car needs a recharge on the AC every single year, maybe consider getting them to tighten it up before you get it refilled. And then we have this situation. The process of creating virtual currencies like Bitcoin or other crypto products like NFTs or anything that uses blockchain technology relies on running warehouses of computers 24/7. We run the risk of crypto mining operations purchasing and repowering retired fossil fuel power plants to power their operations. And that has happened at a repowered coal plant in the Finger Lakes that, as of this recording, is still operating. I cannot overstate the tremendous energy requirements of crypto mining. Crypto in general has a carbon footprint the same size as Norway, the country. Yvonne Taylor of Seneca Lake Guardian summed it up by saying, quote, expanding fossil fuel burning plants to make fake money in the middle of a climate crisis is literally insane, end quote. So, and then even if crypto mining was running on renewable energy, which is what a lot of them are promising to do, you know from the rest of this presentation that we need to be reducing all non-essential electric loads on the grid in order to make room for electric vehicles and other new essential electrical loads. We don't have surplus renewable energy to burn on crypto mining. We don't have extra solar panels. All of them need to be getting installed to meet our existing needs, so we're not meeting those needs with fossil fuels. It's going to take a huge push to meet our clean energy targets as it is. And we don't need, the various municipalities in New York State to be competing with private crypto companies trying to buy the same solar panels. Do you know what I'm saying? So these are some of the highest impact industrial uses to be looking out for as we continue to cut the state's emissions. There is currently a moratorium on crypto mining in New York State while the legislature looks into the environmental impacts. We will see what happens with that going into the future. And then agriculture, which compared to crypto mining is so much simpler to explain. You put seeds in the ground and plants come out and then you eat those plants, etc. So last but absolutely not least, agriculture, 6% of our state's emissions. Those emissions come from large machinery like tractors, carbon released while tilling the soil, so digging it up and releasing the gases that were stored there. Livestock, so things like cows can produce methane. Pesticides and fertilizers, and also just decomposing plant and animal matter that's not composted properly. There are a lot of farming decisions that can reduce or even reverse these emissions. So this is cover cropping. They've got clover growing between the rows of corn. Clover is great because it fixes nitrogen to the soil, so you don't have to fertilize the corn so much. It's getting nitrogen from the roots of its buddies, the clover. Cover cropping stores carbon in the soil and reduces the need for fertilizer. Electric farm equipment, such as tractors, are eligible for funding through the USDA and can cut both costs and carbon emissions. It's also worth noting it is cheaper to maintain electric equipment than gas-powered equipment or diesel-powered equipment because there's fewer moving parts. And then silvopasture is what we're looking at here. Silvopasture is a practice of grazing livestock among trees, which also sequesters carbon and reduces their impact on the climate. And we touched on agrivoltaics and farming among solar arrays earlier in the presentation in the electricity sector. So the umbrella term for many of these practices is regenerative agriculture. It's farming in a way that replenishes the earth rather than depleting it. A lot of indigenous and traditional farming practices are inherently regenerative, and a lot of smaller farms already operate based on regenerative principles. If we had some shifts in how big farms operate, we could see agriculture as a sink for carbon emissions, a way to store or sequester carbon rather than a source, which it currently is, in the not too distant future, which would be incredible. That would be a great change. So those are we've now gone through, these are the 3 remaining sectors. We've gone through all 6 emission sectors in the state, and a little bit of information, or a lot of information, about how we can go about addressing each of them. So to wrap up the presentation, in the final video, we will talk a little bit more about concrete ways everybody can get involved in the clean energy transition. Thank you for your attention, and I hope to see you in the next one.